This question reads, a shuttle van stops exactly 4 times, once at Fundy, once at Los Altos, once at Mineola, and once at Simcoe. Not necessarily in that order. The van starts with exactly 4 passengers on board, Greg, Jasmine, Rosa, and Vijay, each of whom gets off at a different stop. The following conditions hold. Okay, so we have our stops, F, L, M, and S, and then we have our passengers, G, J, R, and V. So we know the stops are going to be 4 consecutive. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we have our stop and our passenger. All right, let's go to the rules. Rule number 1. Los Altos is the first or second stop. Okay, so we know if L is not the first stop, then L is the second stop. If L is not the second stop, L is the first stop. So L is not third and L is not fourth. All right, rule number 2. R is still on board when the van reaches Mineola. So that means that either R is going to get off at Mineola or R is going to get off after Mineola. So we're going to depict that with M and then greater than or equal to R. So remember, we have our greater than sign shows M is to the left of R, so M is before R, or the equal sign shows that R gets off at M. All right, rule number 3. Jasmine is on board longer than Vijay. So we have 3, Jasmine is on board longer than Vijay, so that means Vijay gets off before Jasmine. So that means Jasmine can't get off in the first stop, and Vijay can't get off on the last stop. And the last rule, rule number 4, if Jasmine is still on board when the van reaches Fundy, then Greg is still on board when the van reaches Simcoe. Otherwise, Greg is not still on board when the van reaches Simcoe. Okay, so rule number 4, we have if Jasmine is still on board at Fundy, then Greg is still on board at Simcoe. Contrapositive, if Greg is not still on board at Simcoe, then Jasmine is not still on board at Fundy. Now, it's important that we understand how to write out this second clause. Otherwise, Greg is not still on board when the van reaches Simcoe. So in the case that Jasmine is not still on board when the van reaches Fundy, Greg is not still on board when the van reaches Simcoe. If we just leave our diagram like this leaves the option where we have the necessary condition of the rule and its contrapositive to be a viable possibility. So that means at this point we can have G still being on the van at Simcoe while J is not on the van at Fundy, and that goes against the second clause of rule number 4. So to remedy this, we're also going to write it out if J is not at Fundy, then G is not going to be at Simcoe, contrapositive. If G is at Simcoe, then J is at Fundy. And this way we make sure we get both clauses of rule number 4. All right, so those are our deductions, rules, and our setup. Let's go ahead and hit the questions.